The office was a cathedral of glass and quiet. After hours, the city's neon bled through floor-to-ceiling windows, and the only steady sound was the low breath of the air conditioner. At the far end, beneath a halo of desk light, Adrian Cole, flawless suit, sleeves unsmudged by the day, was still signing his empire into tomorrow. A soft knock. He didn't invite interruptions, but the door eased open anyway. Maya stepped in. Quiet shoes, tighter grip on a notepad than a notepad deserved. She was the kind of intern who made herself smaller than the furniture, but tonight her eyes kept skimming the corners of the room as if the shadows might blink. "Mr. Cole," she said, barely above a breath. Adrian looked up over the rim of his glasses. "Yes, Maya." She glanced toward the hallway, then crossed the carpet until the desk lamp lit the worry on her face. When she spoke again, the words came like a secret being smuggled past the walls. "There's a camera in your office." Silence stretched. Somewhere below, a siren threaded the streets and faded. "A camera," he repeated, tasting the word, testing it against the certainty he lived on. "Here." She nodded. "I didn't want to say anything unless I was sure. I overheard two people near the break room joking that everything's on record. Later, when I brought in the quarterly binder, that lamp by the bookshelf," she pointed, "it looked moved, and at the base I think I saw a lens." Adrian's gaze slid to the lamp. Harmless, ordinary, 1,000 times seen, never really looked at. He stood, crossed the room, and knelt as if before an altar. Up close, the brass base revealed a pin-prick circle, no bigger than a freckle, nothing until you knew where to look. He didn't touch it. "Are you certain about what you heard?" His voice was level, his eyes weren't. "I wouldn't have come otherwise," she said. Her fingers had gone white around the notepad. Adrian straightened, mind kicking through possibilities with the precision that had made him inevitable. Competitor, board member, staff, or someone closer than any of them. The thought landed cold. "You did the right thing," he said at last. Relief flickered across her face and vanished. "What will you do?" "Nothing," he said, and the word was a blade sheathing itself. "Not yet." She hesitated, then nodded. "Good night, Mr. Cole." When the door latched, the room felt different, like a stage after the audience realizes the set is a lie. Adrian switched off the desk lamp, letting the office fold into dusk. In the corner, the other lamp burned on, soft light, steady glow, a tiny, unblinking pupil at its base. He sat, hands steepled, and looked back at the eye that had been looking at him. His office was where billion-dollar truths were spoken aloud. If this room had been listening for weeks, who had he been talking to? Across the glass, the city pulsed. Contracts, stock ticks, rival ambitions flashing in distant windows. Inside, the air felt thinner. "Whoever you are," he thought, gaze never leaving the lamp. "You just stepped into my house." He exhaled once, slow and even, until the pulse in his wrist matched the hum in the vents. Control returned like tide over sand. The plan was simple, and it would start with restraint. Keep the lamp, keep the routine, feed the eye what he wanted it to see. Let the watcher relax. Let the leak confirm itself. Then pull the thread and watch the mask come off. In the dim, the hidden lens glimmered. Adrian let it watch him do nothing at all. Tomorrow, he would begin. Morning returned the office to its bright, surgical calm. Adrian walked in at 8:01, jacket sharp, expression unreadable. He hung his coat, set his phone face down, and let his gaze pass over the room as if nothing inside it had changed. The lamp waited in the corner, polite, harmless, lit. He pressed the intercom. "Richard." "My office." Richard Vale, head of security for a decade, moved like a door you couldn't push open. Broad-shouldered, close-cropped, the kind of quiet that meant he'd already noticed the things you hadn't. He stepped in, shut the door, and stood. "Check the lamp by the bookshelf," Adrian said. "No gloves, no tools. Just look." Richard crossed the carpet. He bent, angled the base, and went very still. "How long?" Adrian asked, still reading an email that said nothing important. "Hard to say," Richard murmured. "But it's live. I can see the micro port. Whoever installed it knows what they're doing." "Leave it," Adrian said. "Log the make, pull the building's access logs for the last 4 weeks, and rotate your team off this floor. Fewer eyes." Richard's jaw tightened. "You want me to take it out?" "I want whoever's watching to keep watching." Adrian looked up at last. "If I pull it now, they scatter. If I let it breathe, they get confident." A beat, then a nod. "Understood." When Richard left, the office resumed its choreography. Assistants in, assistants out. Numbers slid across screens. Meetings formed and dissolved like weather. Adrian listened more than he spoke. He watched people's hands when they talked, and their eyes when they thought no one was looking. Just before lunch, Maya slipped in with a stack of contracts and the careful posture of someone who didn't want to exist. Adrian signed 3 places and handed the folder back. "Good instincts last night," he said, quiet enough to be private. Color touched her cheeks. Thank you, sir." "Keep what you heard to yourself," he added. "Say nothing. To anyone." She nodded once, a promise folded small. By afternoon, Adrian had settled into the performance. He took 2 calls by the window, crossed his legs the way he always did, flipped through a briefing like it mattered. He let a harmless sentence drift toward the lamp. "Schedule the European diligence for Q3. Not real, not entirely. Bait." At 4:15, Richard returned with a tablet. "Access logs," he said. 3 anomalies in the time frame. Late entries that don't match card and camera pairs. Night cleaning. 1 catering vendor after hours, and..." He swiped. "A maintenance ticket in your wing that doesn't exist on facilities ledger. Door cameras? Blinded for 6 minutes. Whoever did it used our own test pattern overlay. Internal knowledge." "Which means an insider," Adrian said. "Or someone close enough to be trained like one." Adrian's gaze drifted to the lamp. "How far can you trace the device?" "I'll set up a passive catch on its signal, but if I interrogate it directly, they'll know." "Passive, then," Adrian said. "Let it think we're asleep." Richard hesitated. "There's something else." He slid over a photo, a freeze frame from a hallway camera, time-stamped 2 weeks back. A slim figure, profile washed in grayscale, hair swept up, large handbag, face turned away. "Who?" Adrian asked. "Resolution's poor. Could be any number of executives. Or a visitor." Richard tapped the handbag. "If I were smuggling a palm transmitter past lobby scanners, I'd hide it there." Adrian didn't blink. "Map every instance that bag appears on our cameras the last month. And keep your team compartmentalized. No chatter." Evening thinned the office. Floors dimmed by sections until only the top remained lit like a lighthouse. Adrian stayed. He waited through the small sounds, the elevator ding far down, the closing throat of the ice machine, until the building felt like it was holding its breath. He picked up the phone, turned slightly toward the lamp, and made a call over a line Richard had shielded an hour earlier. "Yeah," he said. Warm but businesslike. "Draft's ready. Lock the vault copy tonight." He let a pause stretch. "No, only one other person has the final numbers. Yes, Vanessa knows the timing." He ended the call, laid the phone down, and let the sentence hang in the room like perfume. If the camera had ears, and it did, that name would travel wherever its wire led. He poured a glass of water and stood at the window. The city looked honest from 40 floors up, movements reduced to light, intentions to motion. He watched long enough for his pulse to settle, then turned back to his desk and opened a blank email. Subject: Facilities Audit, West Wing Body, Randomize Vendor Access, New Badge Issuance Frozen, Silent. He hovered over Send, and then didn't. Not yet. Every action was a chord the watcher could hear. He'd play them in the right order. The elevator chimed. Footsteps, heels, unhurried. The door opened without a knock. Habit, privilege. Vanessa filled the doorway with the sort of effortless poise that made photographers forgive their lenses. Tailored ivory, a quick smile that looked practiced from 1,000 galas. "You're still here?" she said, crossing the room like she owned the air. "I thought I'd steal you for dinner." Adrian gestured to the chair opposite. 5 minutes. She sat, crossed her legs, adjusted a delicate bracelet. "You sounded intense on the phone last night," she said lightly. "Something about locking a vault copy? Billion plus upside?" Every cell in Adrian's body stayed still. He hadn't called her. He hadn't told anyone but the room. "Did I?" he said, mild. She laughed. "Too soft, too glossy. You're always juggling secrets. Maybe I'm just keeping up." He let the silence open, not accusing. Not yet. Just empty enough for echoes to return. 5 minutes, he repeated, and stood, as if the meeting were over before it began. On her way out, Vanessa's fingers brushed the lamp's shade as though straightening it by instinct. The touch was feather-light. The detail was not. When the door closed, Adrian remained standing, eyes on the place her hand had been. The performance was working. The line was tight. Something tugged from the other side. He picked up his phone and finally sent the facilities email. Then he texted Richard one line. Morning brought glassy light and a colder edge to Adrian's resolve. He arrived before anyone else, walked the length of his office, and stood beside the lamp like a priest at a confessional. The camera was gone. Richard had taken it, but its ghost lingered, a reminder that silence could be a weapon. He pressed the intercom. "Maya, with me." She stepped in moments later, neat as ever, the kind of presence that didn't ask to be noticed, but was impossible to ignore once you did. He gestured to the chair opposite. "You trusted me with something you didn't have to," he said. "I need one more thing. Your discretion." "You have it," she answered, steady. "Good. Today I'm going to tell 3 different people 3 different versions of the same deal, same headline, different numbers and partners. If any version leaks, I'll know which mouth it came from." Maya nodded once. "Understood." He started with Lionel Frost, a board member who smiled too quickly and finished other people's sentences. Over coffee, Adrian spoke about an imminent acquisition in Prague. Valuation, escrow timing, counsel lined up. Lies carved cleanly enough to pass any inspection. An hour later, it was Sandra Vale, his COO, Berlin, not Prague. Licensing, not acquisition. A timeline impossible to meet unless you had leverage he knew she didn't. She left with a crisp folder and an even crisper goodbye. Finally, he invited Vanessa. He didn't want to. The name alone tugged at a thread somewhere deep in his chest, but feelings were a currency he could no longer afford. She breezed in late morning, light on perfume and heavy on that practiced ease. "You look better," she said, studying him as if he were a painting titled "Worth Keeping." "I slept," he lied. He laid out Paris, an exclusive JV with a storied French firm, $1 billion on the table if they moved before quarter end, and just enough texture to make any listener feel special. She asked soft questions, the kind that live between curiosity and claim. He gave soft answers and watched her eyes catalog every detail. When she left, he didn't watch the door close. He watched the skyline instead, a field of bright, indifferent victories. The game was in motion. All he had to do was wait. By dusk, Richard had the nets out. Keyword alerts, dark web listeners, a friend embedded at a rival fund who owed him more than one favor. Adrien kept his day the way a surgeon keeps his hands. Precise, ordinary, spotless. Numbers, calls, a press check about a product launch that had suddenly become background noise to the real war. The first tremor arrived at 10:07 p.m. Richard's text, "Prague rumor hits small fund thread. Trace, L. Frost aid, supper, W. Lionel." Adrien exhaled, almost amused. Lionel was a predictable sin. He'd deal with him later. At 11:22 p.m., a second ripple. Berlin licensing whisper in supply chain slack. Source masked, working. He drummed his fingers once, twice, then stopped. Sandra was careful. If it was her, it would never be direct. He filed the thought away. He was pouring a glass of water when the third wave hit. No ripple this time. A clean, cold wall. Paris JV details surface in rival term sheet. Identifiers match your script. Timestamp, 21 min ago. Recipient, V.A. Route. Personal email, private broker. No anger, no shock. Just a stillness so complete, the city seemed to fall silent around it. He set the glass down and called Richard. "I want documentation, end to end. Chain of custody, signatures, hashes. I want it so clean a judge could eat off it." "You have it by morning," Richard said. "And Adrien, there's a payment trail, small cuts across months. Same broker." "How much?" "Not enough to be obvious. Enough to be obscene." He thanked him and hung up. The room felt different now. Not colder, not darker, just honest. He sent one last message to Maya. "Good work. Take tomorrow off." She replied with a single dot, her version of a salute. The next day put on its usual mask. He wore his. Meetings ran. Coffee cooled. The lobby orchids pretended immortality. And Adrien, unhurried and immaculate, made the calls that would turn evidence into consequence. Lionel first. A quiet removal wrapped as a sabbatical with family reasons. Sandra next. A conversation that tested the alloy of her loyalty. She didn't bend. She brought him her comms logs before he asked, pointed to the masked route, and named the contractor who'd overstepped. The man was gone by lunch. Finally, Vanessa. He asked her to meet at the penthouse, not the office. He wanted her out of his house of glass and steel, away from the ghosts of the lamp and all the sharp edges she'd learned to navigate. He wanted a room where she had no map. She arrived at sunset. The city had turned to molten gold, spilling through the windows in sheets. She was beautiful the way fire is beautiful. Mesmerizing. Hungry. "You sounded serious," she said, hanging her coat with proprietary ease. "Is everything all right?" "No," he said, "but it will be." He poured wine. She took hers. He didn't touch his. "I told you last night," he said. "Trust is the only currency that doesn't inflate." She smiled, patient. And? He slid a leather folder onto the table between them and opened it. Screenshots, wire records, message headers, the neat, unromantic architecture of betrayal. For a heartbeat, the air thinned. Then she set the glass down and studied the pages like a syllabus. When she looked up, the mask was gone. No tears, no performance, just the person beneath the polish. So, she said evenly, you were always going to win. This isn't a win, Adrian replied. It's a correction. What now? Her voice didn't waver. Now it ends. He closed the folder. The engagement, the access, the story. Legal will be in touch. Security will escort you from the building tomorrow. You will sign what they put in front of you. In exchange, your name stays out of rooms you can't afford to be in. She held his gaze for a long, unblinking moment. You think you're merciful? I think I'm finished. She stood, smoothed her jacket, and gave him a look he couldn't read. Admiration, hatred, relief, maybe all three. You're colder than your glass towers, she said softly, and walked to the door. When the latch clicked, the room exhaled. Adrian moved to the window. The city glittered like a constellation he finally knew by name. Behind him, the folder lay where he'd left it. A closed book with a simple moral. Walls are only strong if you know who holds the keys. He texted Richard. Proceed. He texted Maya. Back in tomorrow? I could use your eyes on a proposal. Her reply came fast. I'll be there early. He allowed himself one brief smile, small and private. The lamp in the corner threw its ordinary light across the floor. No lens, no witness, no whisper but his own. The next move had been his. The board would learn what mattered. The house was clean. And somewhere below, the city kept humming, indifferent and eternal, as he rewrote the rules of who he let stand close. Morning arrived with a quiet that felt earned. The lamp in the corner cast its harmless circle. The desk gleamed. The skyline waited. Adrian reached the office before sunrise and read through Richard's overnight packet. Chain of custody logs, packet captures, a neat diagram of how the lamp's transmitter had hopped Wi-Fi handoffs like stepping stones to a broker's relay. It was all there. Dates, hashes, payouts, clean enough for a judge, sharp enough for a board. Maya slipped in at 7:12 carrying 2 coffees and a folder clipped square. Drafted the Prague-Berlin post-mortems, she said, setting 1 cup down. Also pulled a clean template for vendor vetting. Figured we'll need it. He studied her. You slept? Eventually, she said, deadpan, and the corner of his mouth moved. At 9, the boardroom filled with the ritual choreography of power. Leather chairs, hushed voices, the metallic breath of the espresso machine. Adrian stood at the head of the table and said what mattered. We had a breach. It was intimate, not technical. 3 stories were set, 3 routes lit up. You'll find documentation in your packets. Lionel, your aide, sold rumor as currency. He is gone from my company by noon. Sandra, your contractor, tunneled through a masked Slack relay. He is gone by lunch. The 3rd route was personal. It is already over. Silence did what it does when truth arrives without apology. The members leafed pages they already knew would cut. Sandra lifted her eyes. I've suspended the vendor, opened an internal audit, and rekeyed privileged channels. I'll own this. See that you do, Adrian said, and moved on. He didn't mention Vanessa by name. The affidavit didn't need it. He only made a promise. We do not survive on growth alone. We survive on trust. Anyone caught selling it will find the floor comes fast. When the meeting ended, The boards scattered into the hallway's practiced murmur. Marcus, the oldest voice in the room, lingered. "You didn't flinch," he said. "I did earlier," Adrian answered. "Privately. That's where flinching belongs." By noon, HR's language had turned the messy into the manageable. Personal leave, performance misalignment, vendor non-compliance. Security badges deactivated with the softest, cruelest chime in the building. The machine kept moving. He took Maya to lunch in the cafeteria instead of the restaurant upstairs. No linen, no jazz. Just the clatter of plates and the democracy of good soup. "You put your name on a lot of late-night logs," he said between spoonfuls. She shrugged. "You pay me to see things." "I saw them." "I pay you to tell the truth when it's inconvenient." "That too." He hesitated, then asked, "Why did you tell me?" Maya turned the paper cup slowly, the way you turn a thought. "Because my mother cleaned offices where men like you gave speeches about ethics while looking past the people emptying their bins," she said, voice even. "I promised myself if I ever sat near the microphone, I'd use it." He nodded once, as if accepting terms of a contract he was grateful to sign. "Then let's build something that can hold a microphone without shaking." They walked back past the lobby orchids, still pretending immortality, and into a day that had decided to behave. For an hour, numbers were just numbers again. Projections lined up. A patent dispute flickered and died. A product manager stumbled into a brilliant sentence and wrote it down before it escaped. At 3:06 p.m., Richard appeared in the doorway with a face that meant the chapter wasn't over. "We found a second device," he said. Not a camera. An audio slug stitched into the felt under the conference table in room 42. Same broker signature. Different installer? Adrian set his pen down. "When?" "Installed 3 weeks before the lamp. Whoever planned this had layers." "Access logs?" "Ugly, but usable." The installer piggybacked a facilities badge, night shift, then timed tailgates behind 2 separate employees to avoid patterning. "We're sorting frame by frame." "Keep sorting," Adrian said, "and lock down the 40s. No meetings in that bank until you hand me a diagram I can trust." When Richard left, Adrian looked at the calendar and started canceling meetings with the satisfaction of a man sanding a table down to raw wood. He moved a product review to Zoom. He moved a compliance check to next week. He moved a board subcommittee to a smaller room with a new felt pad fresh out of plastic, where the only bugs were the anecdotes executives liked to tell about themselves. By evening, the penthouse breathed like a place that remembered being home. He poured water, not wine, and dialed legal. The engagement dissolution would be quiet, contractual, final, no press, no spectacle. Vanessa would sign because the alternative was a courtroom, and she liked glass more than gavels. He let the lawyer talk until the to-do list had the shape of a finished thing. He found the old habit of pacing stop him at the window. The city's grid pulsed. A helicopter wrote an invisible parenthesis over the river. Somewhere, a siren proved someone else's night was worse. He thought about the lamp and the lens that wasn't there, and the rules he was rewriting. Then he did something he hadn't done in months. He closed his eyes and let a minute pass without making it work for him. The next morning, a small envelope waited on his chair. Cream paper, no sender. Inside, a single page, printed in a font too self-assured. "You cut one thread. There are others. Some are sewn where you keep your heart." He stared at the letter, then at the place on his desk where the lamp's shadow used to darken. Vanessa's signature wasn't a signature. It was a dare. He scanned it, bagged it, logged it. He did not let it pull him back into the old orbit. Instead, he called a 7 a.m. all hands with 10 people and one rule. We live inside a trust audit until this is over. Permissions go to zero and earn their way up. Vendors are papered and repapered. Hardware is pulled and reissued. If you breathe near a microphone, pretend it's a subpoena. No one argued. They were tired and a little scared, and more than anything, grateful for a sentence that told them where to stand. By noon, facilities delivered new key plates. IT rebuilt admin groups. Legal refreshed NDAs the way you change a lock after someone copies a key. Maya turned her binder into a playbook. Tabs, checkboxes, a spine that wouldn't bend. She taped a post-it to the cover. Trust isn't a feeling. It's an architecture. Late afternoon, Sandra knocked once and entered with a face that had chosen courage over comfort. "It wasn't me," she said, setting a drive on his desk. "But it was someone I vouched for. That makes it mine. I've written my resignation. If you want it, it's yours." Adrian studied the envelope, then her. "You fired the contractor. You opened your logs. You walked in here before I asked. Keep your job," he said. "Earn it again." She exhaled a breath she'd been holding all day. "I will," she said, and left before either of them could soften the moment. Dusk bled the city into indigo. Richard texted, "Frame by frame found our tailgate, not staff, former staff, 6 months out. Badge never deactivated by vendor." Pulling thread. Adrian typed back, "When you have the sweater, bring it." He stood by the window again, the habit now a ritual. Somewhere below, people were telling stories about their days. A win, a loss, a thing that almost broke them but didn't. His story had sharpened, not shrunk. The walls were stronger because he'd learned who could hold the keys and who would sell them for a clean wire and a dirtier conscience. On his desk, Maya's post-it glowed like a small lighthouse. Architecture, not hope. He could build that. He turned off the lamp, left the office, and let the door close on a room that had finally remembered how to keep a secret. By dawn, Richard had a sweater to pull. "Name's Caleb Rusk," he said, dropping a thin dossier on Adrian's desk. "Ex-facilities tech for a vendor we off-boarded last winter. Badge should have died with the contract. It didn't." He piggybacked 2 night shifts, slid the audio slug into room 42, and left through the loading dock like a rumor. Adrian leafed the file. Tattoo on left wrist. A misdemeanor from a decade ago. Payroll gaps that lined up suspiciously well with deposits from a shell LLC. "Who's paying him?" Adrian asked. "On paper, Brighthold Retail Services," Richard said. In practice, Brighthold is a mailbox in Nevada. The account behind it routes through a boutique corporate intelligence shop out of Miami, Larkin Pike Advisory. They sell discretion with a side of deniability. Clients? Layered. We're unwinding. But Larkin Pike has 2 anchors, a competitor you know, Kestrel North, and a private individual retainer we haven't named yet. Adrian's stare held. "The individual retainer?" Richard tapped the folder's inside flap. Wire references read Velour. Could be a project code name, could be vanity. We're matching it to anyone who'd choose the word on purpose. Adrian stood, walked to the window, and watched a forklift draw chalk lines with its forks on a construction site 10 floors below. "Bring me Caleb before midday, and warm a room that's clean. No felt. No vents that haven't been kissed by a screwdriver in the last hour." They used a storage suite on 38. New paint, empty shelves, a square table that still smelled like cardboard. Caleb arrived in a borrowed blazer that hung off him like a confession. He sat, eyes flicking to corners, saw nothing, settled into the only truth left to him: exhaustion. "You're not under arrest," Adrian said, voice level. "You're under a choice." Caleb swallowed. I needed the money." "Everyone who sells something does," Adrian said. "What mattered is what you sold." Richard slid a form across. "Immunity with teeth," he said. "Full cooperation, full disclosure, and you're a witness, not a defendant. Lie or omit, and we walk this to the DA with a bow." Caleb's shoulders dropped a centimeter. "I didn't start it," he said. "Guy named Tripp at Larkin Pike reached out. Said there was interest in ambient access to your floors. No break-ins, no smash and grab. Surgical. I had a dead badge my old boss forgot to kill. It was easy." "Who did you report to?" Adrian asked. "Tripp. Sometimes a woman with a French accent. He called her Madame V, never a real name. I was told not to ask." "Velour," Adrian thought. "Of course you'd name your mask after fabric." "Roots," Richard said. "Everything uplinked to a broker node near the river," Caleb answered, hands shaking less now that the words were moving. "Tripp would text me if something needed servicing. He said there was a premium client who wanted your private conversations in real time. Said the client was close enough to taste the office espresso." Adrian didn't let the sentence land on his face. "You'll sign the statement," he said, "and then you'll help us stage a return." "A return?" "You'll send Tripp one last gift," Adrian said. "Only this time, the gift will come in a box we own. They built it in 12 hours. A decoy audio path inside a brand new felt pad, seeded with a story that looked like blood to a shark. No jargon, just a billion-scented phrase placed where it would carry. Final term sheet ready. European exclusivity. Interim board votes lined up. Personal escrow opened. The kind of bait that would shake the hands of anyone listening. Maya drafted the script with a reporter's ear and an engineer's cruelty. "You want a rhythm that sounds unguarded," she said, setting her pages on Adrian's desk. "One long sentence too many. A laugh that arrives a half-beat late. It needs to feel like you forgot the room might remember." Adrian read, made 2 edits, then none. "You ever write theater?" he asked. "Only reality," she said. "It tends to be stranger." At 6 p.m., Room 42 hosted its performance. Adrian and Marcus took their seats. 2 executives joined as dressing, enough bodies to justify the booking. The decoy mic whispered its payload to the world. The camera that wasn't there blinked in Adrian's imagination and failed to record anything at all. At 6:31, the meeting ended with harmless action items and a joke about espresso beans that didn't land. "Your timing's getting better," Marcus said in the hallway. "I've had practice," Adrian replied. Richard texted at 7:12. "Decoy bite, broker node lit. Packet path hopping south. Miami in 4. 4 minutes later, Larkin Pike endpoint opened. Secondary relay to a residential fiber in the Heights. Then a photograph arrived. A townhouse stoop, ivy strangling a railing. A brushed steel mailbox with a vanity plate. V. Richards' message. "Velour lives here." Adrian's jaw set in a line he didn't know he had. "We knock tonight," he said. "Or we make her come to us," Maya offered quietly from the doorway. "People who curate their lives won't answer a door with strangers on the stoop, but they will answer a mirror." Adrian raised an eyebrow. "Press," she said simply. "Controlled, not chaotic. A forum where truth looks like power and spin looks like sweat. Invite only. The kind of room a person named Madame V can't resist." He considered. A forum requires evidence that walks on its own legs. Then we walk it, Maya said, tapping the decoy drive. We already have the steps. They booked a small theater space for the next evening, the kind used for product launches and earnest panels about the future of work. Legal cleared the language. PR wrapped it in a tone that said, "We aren't bleeding. We're building." 20 chairs went to reporters who preferred questions to access. 5 went to board members. 1 stayed empty by design. Adrian opened without preamble. "You're here because rumor sells faster than truth," he said into a microphone that fed only the room. "Tonight we'll sell truth at cost." He walked them through the architecture. No melodrama, no anecdotes that made him the hero. He showed the lamp, the felt, the packet hops, the payments. He never said Vanessa's name. He said velour and let the room hear velvet and knives. He played a clean clip from the decoy meeting, and then, side by side, a time-stamped surge of network traffic that followed it to Miami and up to the Heights. Reporters wrote like court stenographers. Cameras stayed holstered by prearrangement. It wasn't spectacle. It was record. "Why this format?" someone asked. "Because explanations rot on social media," Adrian said. "And because if I'm asking my employees to build trust like an engineer builds a bridge, I should be willing to show the load tests." He left time for 10 questions. He took 9. The 10th came from the aisle, soft and perfumed with confidence. "So the architect of your pain is a letter and a street," a woman's voice said. "How poetic." Heads turned. A woman in a cream suit stood just inside the door, sunglasses as unnecessary as they were deliberate. Her accent lifted the ends of words like spoons. "Velour," Maya breathed under hers. Adrian didn't smile. "We kept a seat for you," he said, gesturing to the empty chair up front. She declined it with a tilt of her head. "You wanted a mirror," she said. "Allow me to be reflective. You're very good at building cages around narratives, but cages have doors. Who do you think opened yours from the inside?" The room held its breath. Adrian let silence build a frame around her sentence. "Someone who believes proximity is a substitute for belonging," he said at last. "Someone who thinks power is contagious." "Charming," she said, "and wrong. Power is transactional. You of all people should know that." "Then transacting is over," Adrian said, nodding to Richard in the back. The head of security stepped forward and handed her a sealed envelope. Civil demand letters, injunction drafts, a courtesy copy of the DA's liaison contact. She took it with a theatrical flick of the wrist, like accepting an award she didn't plan to keep. "You'll find your counsel familiar with these shapes," Adrian added. "Walk carefully. The next step is a courthouse, not a green room." Velour's smile didn't reach her eyes. "You've grown since last we listened, Monsieur Cole," she said. "It looks good on you." Then she turned, the audience parting by instinct, and left the way a ghost leaves, through attention, not walls. A murmur rolled the room, half relief, half adrenaline. Adrian closed the session with the only line he trusted. "We will be publishing technical documentation and a vendor protocol update. Read it. Use it. If you run a company, steal it. If you work at one, demand it." Outside, the night felt lighter by degrees. Reporters shook hands without trying to trade them for quotes. Board members asked questions that sounded like stewardship, not self-preservation. Marcus clapped a hand on Adrian's shoulder. "You just taught a master class," he said. "I taught myself to stop apologizing for being precise," Adrian answered. Maya fell in step as they reached the elevators. She'll come again, she said. Then we'll be ready, Adrian replied. Back upstairs, a message waited from Richard. Miami PD picked up Tripp on an unrelated warrant. He flipped before the coffee cooled. Larkin Pike's managing partner is already lawyering up. Also, Caleb signed. He asked if he could start over somewhere that doesn't require keys. Adrian typed, pay him to move. Different city, new trade. No keyboards. He set the phone down and looked at the lampless corner of his office. In its place, a small fern uncurled like a quiet argument for life going on. He sat, opened Maya's playbook to the first tab, Principles, and read the first line she'd written in her neat, uncompromising hand. Trust isn't the absence of betrayal. It's the system that outlives it. He closed the binder, turned off the lights, and let the door seal behind him with the soft click of a boundary restored. Morning opened like a courtroom. At 8 sharp, the board filed into the glass-walled chamber on 40, faces arranged into neutral. A camouflage executives learned before they learned EBITDA. Adrian took the head seat without hesitation. Overnight, legal had distributed a clean brief. Chain of custody on the devices, packet traces, signed statement from Caleb, initial notes from Miami PD. The paper did what paper does when it's good. It carried weight. Gabriella cleared her throat first. We appreciate last night's forum, she said. But markets don't read footnotes. We need a posture. Today. Then here's one, Adrian said. We will publish the full vendor security protocol and open source our detection tools. We'll adopt a third-party monitor with authority to audit me, not just the company. A pause. Roberto, the veteran, tilted his head. You're inviting oversight of yourself. I'm removing ambiguity, Adrian replied. Investors punish uncertainty more than scandal. Marcus, still the friend who told truths plain, added, You want continuity? Back this. If you want theater, you'll get a mess and a headline. They voted. It wasn't unanimous, but it wasn't close. The resolution passed. A little of the room's stiffness left with it. On the way out, Roberto hung back. You could have buried parts of this, he said. I almost did, Adrian admitted. Good that you didn't, Roberto said. Cement hardens stronger under pressure if it's poured right the first time. The next rumor didn't come from a paper or a fund. It came from a phone. Maya caught Adrian in the corridor, voice low. I got a message from an unknown number, she said, holding out her screen. You like your new title? Shame if the person who helped you got misremembered. He read it twice. Reply nothing, he said. Richard will change your number and ghost every trace. Already in motion, Richard said from behind them, having appeared with the unsettling gravity of someone who moves like a shadow by habit. Also, for what it's worth, the message routed through a relay used by lifestyle PR firms. It's performative. Maya nodded, tucking the worry under her composure. Performative still bruises, she said. Then we'll put armor where bruises happen, Adrian answered. Walk with me. They stepped into the war room. Maps, timelines, a whiteboard with the word Valor underlined once and then underlined again, harder. Adrian pointed to an empty box on the timeline. Fill me in, Larkin Pike? Richard tapped a tablet. Miami PD flipped Tripp. He gave us 2 client lists, one clean, one dirty. Kestrel North is in the dirty column. So is a private retainer that pays through a Luxembourg trust. Beneficiary masked. We'll need a court to peel it. And Madame V? Adrian asked. She's not a ghost, Richard said. Her townhouse title sits under a boutique developer out of the Heights. The developer's managing partner sits on two charity boards with, he looked up, choosing the gentlest way, Vanessa. The name cracked the air, though Adrian didn't let it land. He folded his arms, thinking. Vanessa hadn't texted since the envelope in his penthouse. Silence is a strategy when you have an exit. It's a hole when you don't. Let's not chase what we can pull, Adrian said at last. File civil. Share criminal evidence. No leaks from us. The model doesn't change because the villain likes soft lighting. Maya wrote it on the board exactly like he said it. She had a way of turning instruction into architecture. By noon, the open letter went live on the company site. Our security, our responsibility. It didn't read like PR, it read like engineering. It listed failures, fixes, and the promise of an external audit that could make management uncomfortable. Investors appreciated discomfort when it looked like discipline. Journalists called. Adrian spoke once on the record, and then not again. We'll publish updates in docs, not sound bites, he said. If you want quotes, quote the code. It wasn't a line built to trend. That was fine. He was done trying to be quotable. He preferred to be legible. At 3, legal came in with the first counterswing. Vanessa's counsel sent a preservation letter, Diana said, sliding a folder across the desk. They're threatening defamation if she's named, even indirectly. Adrian skimmed the letter. Then the attached draft complaint filled with words that had edges, malice, vendetta, spurned. He closed it softly. She wants to bait you into a fight in her arena, image, Diana said. Don't go. I won't, he said. We'll keep talking in diagrams. Diana smiled, thin, real. I've added subpoenas for the trust and the townhouse holding company. Also, Miami is moving on Larkin Pike's founder. No TV, no cameras. The good kind of progress. Thank you, he said. The words had weight. She had become more than counsel. She was an iron line in the structure. Before leaving, Diana hesitated. One more thing. Maya's being targeted. We'll set a protective order if needed. But sometimes this is better than court. She set a small card on the desk. The name of a pro bono digital safety group. Adrian looked past the card to the board wall where principals sat at the top. Trust isn't passive. It requires infrastructure. Build her a wall, he said to Richard, and then teach her how to maintain it without us. On it, Richard said. At dusk, Adrian drove to a place he hadn't been in months. The small house across the river where his mother kept her garden tidy enough to embarrass younger knees. Esperanza met him at the door with a dish towel over her shoulder and the smell of simmering tomatoes trailing her like a promise. They sat at the kitchen table where his elbows had learned to keep in and his words had learned to stay out until asked. I heard you on the news, she said, spooning sauce into bowls. You sounded like your grandfather when the irrigation line burst, calm and very tired. Accurate, he said. She passed him bread, then looked at him properly. You knew that woman wasn't for you, she said without accusation. I knew she was beautiful in rooms that wanted to be seen, he said. I mistook that for belonging. His mother's mouth tugged at a smile. You were a quiet child who liked machines. Of course you misread the theater. Now you know. They ate in companionable silence for a while. Then she said, You're protecting a girl who told you a hard thing. Good. Protect the part of yourself that listened, too. He nodded, because some advice doesn't require language. Night returned him to the office, where the city's light smudged the windows, and the fern in the corner pretended the air was a forest. Maya stood by the conference screen with a map of relationships open like a nervous system. I traced the charity overlaps, she said. Velour presents herself as a cultural curator. Small salons, book launches, a podcast with velvet in the name, because of course. A faint smile. Her real work is introductions. She sells closeness. Closeness is the counterfeit of trust, Adrian said. It looks similar until it's spent. Maya nodded. There's something else, she added, fingers hovering over a name. A junior account exec at Kestrel North emailed a reporter last week with phrases lifted from your decoy call. She time-stamped it 30 minutes after our meeting. If we get her to confirm, we tie Kestrel to the wire, not just the rumor. And if she won't? He asked. Then we do what we did today, Maya said. We document without fireworks. We make it boring to deny. Adrian almost laughed. The most subversive sentence you've said all week. The screen blinked. Richard's alert. Heads up, Velour posted a statement. A link followed to a glossy site stacked with serif fonts and lavender margins. As a woman who has dedicated her life to elevating culture, I am saddened by attempts to weaponize private relationships. Adrian closed it. We won't feed it. Agreed, Maya said. We'll feed the archive instead. They worked until the hour lost its name. At some point, Richard popped in to say Caleb was on a bus to a different city with a month's expenses and a contact at a union carpentry program. At some point, Diana texted a photo of stamped subpoenas and a caption. Paper moves slower than rumor. It wins more often. At some point, the fern's shadow reached further across the carpet, and the building exhaled the way big things do when people leave them alone. Adrian leaned back and let the fatigue reach him. The betrayal hadn't ended. It had changed format. That was fine. Systems outlast swings. He opened his laptop to write something he'd been postponing. An internal note to the whole company. Not a manifesto, not a pep talk. The subject line wrote itself, after the echo. We were listened to without consent. That breaks something. We fix broken things here. We will build processes that assume bad actors exist and treat everyone else with dignity. If you see something that feels wrong, say it. If you are tired of saying it, say it louder. If you are afraid to say it to me. He hit send before edits could sand it down. On his way out, he paused at the door and looked back. The room wasn't clean of ghosts. It was honest about them. There's a difference. He turned off the lights. His phone buzzed once in his pocket. A message from an unknown number. He almost ignored it, then glanced. You think this ends in court, but it ends at dinner tables you can't enter. He put the phone away without replying. Some threats were weather, some were climate. Either way, he knew what to do. Build roofs that don't leak and teach people how to patch them when they do. Down in the lobby, the night guard lifted a hand. Adrian returned it. Outside, a truck downshifted. A couple laughed. A siren argued with distance. The city went on. The only promise that mattered. Tomorrow would bring depositions and drafts. A headline or three. Another brittle statement from someone who mistook proximity for power. It would also bring a junior engineer's commit that closed a hole, a recruiter's note to a candidate who asked the right questions, a green fern that kept opening new leaves without reading the news. Fault lines don't disappear. They're mapped and built around. And sometimes, if you pour the foundation right, they carry the weight without complaint. The subpoenas landed like honest rain. By midweek, Diana's clerk returned with stamped copies and a thin smile. Luxembourg Trust notified? Townhouse LLC notified. Kestrel North notified, she said, tapping the stack. They'll huff. Paper doesn't care. Adrian nodded. He'd stopped expecting catharsis. The rhythm now was work. Next, junior exec, he said. Maya slid a folder across the table. Name's Sienna Cho, 26, 3 years at Kestrel. I traced the email to her account. She's on paid wellness leave, which is what they call it when legal tells you to vanish. Richard leaned in. We can ask for a voluntary interview, or we wait until she's under oath. Invite her, Adrian said. No pressure. Somewhere neutral. Somewhere she can leave if she wants. They chose a corner table at a tea room where the music was 2 steps louder than a whisper, and the servers pretended not to notice anything. Sienna arrived late, carrying a messenger bag like a shield. She kept her coat on. You're not in trouble, Diana began, kind without softness. We want the truth. If you need counsel, we'll pause. Sienna's eyes flicked from face to face. Lawyer, billionaire, the quiet woman who took notes. She settled on Maya, maybe because Maya looked like someone who'd sat in small rooms where bigger people decided things. I didn't plant anything, Sienna said. I just forwarded what came to me. How did it come to you? Adrian asked. A Slack DM from Ops Liaison, she said. No avatar. Said the boss wanted eyes on for a potential move. They attached an audio snippet, your voice, and a transcript. I flagged it to my director. She told me to route it to our special projects inbox and to keep my head down. Did you ever meet Ops Liaison? Diana asked. No, Sienna said. But the calendar invites from that group. It was always the same building in the Heights. She hesitated. Once I had to courier a package there. Townhouse with a black door. Smelled like sandalwood and money. Velour, Maya murmured. Sienna looked up. Is that her name? Everyone just said the curator. She hosted evenings. Clients called it salon. We were told not to post from there. No tags, no photos, just invoices. Diana slid a card across the table. If Kestrel retaliates, call me. If anyone follows you, call Richard. If your conscience hurts, that's proof it works. Sienna's mouth twitched. My conscience hurts a lot lately, she said, and left with her coat still on. By afternoon, the townhouse address was ink on a warrant application. We won't get inside on day 1, Diana said. But we can ring the doorbell with paper. Sometimes that's enough to crack a veneer. Adrian stared at the map pin, the tiny red balloon over a quiet block where money pretended to be taste. Veneers crack easiest when humidity rises, he said. Let's steam. They didn't leak. They organized. A small site spun up, ClearSite tools, a public repository of detection scripts, redacted network diagrams, a primer on hidden cameras ordinary people might find in places they trusted. A pinned note read, We built these because we needed them. Use them because you shouldn't. It wasn't a clapback. It was a contribution. Within 24 hours, a community college shared the link with its IT cohort. A local union hall asked if the scripts could be taught at orientation. A women's shelter emailed thanks that read like a fist unclenching. Build the boring infrastructure, Maya said, eyes bright for the first time in days. Let it outlive us. Exactly, Adrian said. Now, about those dinner tables we can't enter. Richard lifted a brow. You want to enter? No, Adrian said. I want to put a mirror in the centerpiece. The invitation arrived hand-delivered on cotton stock. An evening of culture and conversation at the townhouse with the black door. Vanessa's name did not appear. Velours did, flourished in ink the color of bruised plums. You were always going to be invited, Diana said. Predators love the theater of proximity. Adrian adjusted a cuff. Then we'll give them theater they won't enjoy. He didn't go alone. He arrived with a composer he'd once funded, a museum registrar, and, quietly, Richard, who never looked like security until someone tried to test the edge of a room. Inside, the air smelled of sandalwood and money. Walls were lined with books whose spines had never softened. Conversations arranged themselves in gentle ellipses, clinking over low laughter. Velour moved between clusters, a study in calibrated welcome. "Mr. Cole," she said, offering a palm that had never known dish soap. The voice was smoke and velvet as advertised. "How good of you to come. Everyone feels safer when a man who builds such tall things is in the room." "I'm between heights," he said, polite. "I came for the books." Her gaze slid over him, assessing value like a dealer. "You'll find most of them uncracked," she said, amused. "We prefer our stories told aloud." She drifted on, leaving a faint perfume and the sense that everything valuable in the room wore flesh, not paper. Maya, invited as staff, wore a black dress and the kind of invisibility expensive rooms grant to people with trays. She didn't carry one. She moved like a shadow with purpose, mapping exits, listening to the cadence of names. A cluster in the corner spoke softly about operatives and noise budgets. Another debated the ethics of curating narratives with the shaky conviction of people who dressed their appetites in philosophy. Richard touched his ear once. Audio live. Diana, 2 blocks away, began a slow, legal recording of consent by presence. A patchwork woven from the house's posted notice, the invitation's fine print, the jurisdiction's statutes, no entrapment, no games, just the room telling on itself. Halfway through a performance by a violinist who deserved a better audience, Vanessa arrived. She wore restraint like armor, simple dress, simple hair, no ring. She pretended not to see Adrian. He returned the courtesy. The violin ended. Applause like rain on tile. Velour reclaimed the room. "Stories are the bones of culture," she said, voice dipped in honey. "Sometimes those bones need setting. That is our work here. Quietly, beautifully." Adrian raised a glass when expected. His smile never reached his eyes. During the staggered intermission, Vanessa drifted close enough to breathe the same air. "You look well," she said without greeting. "I eat," he said, "and walk." "You always were a pedestrian among jets," she replied, a near smile. "It was part of the charm." "You always were a poet when the room asked for prose," he said. He kept his voice mild, his posture unthreatening, his words a bridge he had no intention of crossing. Her gaze cooled. "You've made enemies." "I prefer accurate pluralization," he said. "I've made choices." She tilted her head. "You think law will fix appetite?" "No," he said. "Law fixes behavior. Appetites are geology." She glanced past him, toward Velour. "Geology wins." "Foundations last," he replied. They parted like strangers who had once rehearsed intimacy and forgotten the lines. At 9:15, a donor chuckled a sentence into the room that would later be quoted in an affidavit. "Information wants to be shaped," he said, drunk on his own cleverness. "We're just sculptors with better lighting." Maya wrote the phrase in her head twice. She didn't fumble for a phone. She didn't have to. The room had volunteered its thesis. By 10, the salon turned vulgar. A deal whispered too loudly, a hand on a wrist that wasn't offered. A joke about girls who got lucky when powerful men decided to notice them. Adrian felt the old anger rise. then pass like weather. Weather deserves roofs, not oaths. He found velour near the staircase, receiving compliments as if they were taxes. "You have elegant rooms," he said. "Elegance is mercy for the eye," she replied. "We do difficult work. It deserves cushions." "You sell closeness," he said. "It's a counterfeit with good engraving." She smiled with her eyes and not at all with her mouth. "Closeness is proof of concept," she said. "Trust is a luxury. Not everyone qualifies." "And who does the qualifying?" he asked. "The room," she said, with a small, terrible laugh. "Always the room." He almost thanked her for the line, for the honesty, but stopped. Some wins don't need applause. He left without saying goodbye to Vanessa. Outside, the air was ordinary and honest. Richard exhaled once. "Got more than we thought," he said. "Clean audio, names. The phrase about sculptors is going to look awful in type." "Type is a mirror with ink," Adrian said. "We'll hold it up." The next morning, Clearsight published a second doc, How Influence Launders Itself. It wasn't about people, it was about patterns. How a house becomes a hub. How invoices hide as curation. How salons sell access with an etiquette that keeps hands clean. Footnotes, not flourishes. It read like a lab report. Emails poured in, some grateful, some offended, some frightened. One from a woman who had poured wine in those rooms for 3 years. "There was always a moment the mask slipped," she wrote. "Thanks for naming it, so I know it wasn't in my head." Another from a boutique PR head, who accused Adrian of waging class war in a cardigan. He let that one sit unanswered. Some sentences convicted themselves. Diana filed motions. Judges set dates. Kestrel North's counsel released a statement about malicious mischaracterizations that mischaracterized nothing and convinced no one who read beyond headlines. Investors called to say they liked seeing code instead of slogans. A union hall in the valley printed the detection primers and stacked them next to the coffee urn. At dusk, Adrian walked the floor. The company felt like a machine with a soul. The hum of work, the low laugh by the espresso, the fern in the corner opening another small green flag. Maya caught up to him by the window. The city freckled on. "It felt strange," she said. Standing in that house and hearing them talk like the world was a vase they owned. "Vases break," he said. "Sometimes on purpose," she said. "Sometimes because someone finally stops catching them," he replied. They stood a while, not talking, watching taillights draw small red futures. When the silence had done its work, Maya said, "What now?" "Now we do the work that remains when the cameras are off," he said. "Depositions, docs, boring victories." She smiled. "Boring like infrastructure." "Exactly," he said. "Boring like trust." He turned back to the glass and saw his reflection, not smaller, not grander, just clearer. Rooms where stories are bought will always exist. So will rooms where stories are built. Tonight, he knew which kind he wanted to spend his life in. The summons landed at 6 a.m., slid under Adrian's penthouse door in a vellum envelope with a scent like old cedar. Kestrel North Capital vs. Cole. Petition for a temporary restraining order. Emergency hearing at 11. They wanted Clearsight dark. The primers pulled. His mouth stitched by court order. "Good," Diana said when he texted her the photo. They flinched. By 9, the team was in the conference room that had become a war room. Thermoses, legal pads, a screen frozen on the townhouse's black door. Maya had traded her hoodie for a blazer that still looked new, like a promise she was testing. They're claiming trade secret misappropriation, Diana said, scanning. And irreparable harm to reputation because we described a pattern. They attached affidavits full of poetry and almost no facts. I'll bring facts. Adrian looked up from the petition. What's our risk? They shop venues like perfumes, she said. We got a judge who still believes words mean things. We'll be fine, if nothing explodes between now and 11. Something exploded at 9:37. Not in the building, in the feeds. Vanessa appeared on a morning show shot in a set that looked like a living room where no one ever spilled coffee. She wore neutral sorrow and said Adrian had grown paranoid and fallen under the influence of a junior employee with an agenda. She did not say Maya's name. She didn't need to. A lower third graphic said it for her. Maya watched from the doorway, arms folded so tight her fingers went white. The host nodded with grave, practiced concern. Vanessa spoke of privacy, of stability, of concern for Adrian's health. By minute 3, Diana muted the screen. They're trying to taint the well, she said. It won't touch the judge, but it will splash. You okay? She asked Maya, softening the blade. Maya's jaw flexed once. I didn't whisper for credit, she said. I whispered because the room had ears. Adrian's mouth pressed into a line that might have been anger or care. They're going after you because I won't play the old game, he said. Let them play it alone, Maya replied. At 10:42, they walked into a courtroom the color of solemn wood. The judge, silver hair and a gaze like a steady level, took the bench without theatrics. Kestrel's counsel stood first. Immaculate suit, voice trained to sound like reason. He spoke of reckless publications, of proprietary processes mischaracterized as malign, of salon culture as philanthropic network building. He did not say velour. He did not say camera. He did not say payments routed through shell companies solemnly named after migratory birds. Diana stood, no ornament. Your Honor, we published code. We published patterns. We did not publish anyone's secrets because there were no secrets to steal, only conduct to describe. They ask you to gag a public interest toolkit because it makes their clients uncomfortable. She clicked a remote. On the screen, the townhouse invitation slid into view. Then the posted house notice about ambient recording for safety, the RSVP terms consenting to the capture of remarks for curation. She didn't smirk. Consent is not a magic word, she said, but when the hosts rely on it to protect their collection, they can't pretend the collection never existed. Kestrel's counsel objected, then reconsidered mid-breath. The judge raised a palm. I read your papers, she said. Ms. Rodriguez, anything else? One thing, Diana said. Exhibit 12. The screen changed to a redacted ledger. Dates, amounts. Velour House, LLC, V. Alvarez Holdings. The judge leaned forward. Source? Subpoena response from a bank that still believes in responding, Diana said. We're not litigating their accounting yet. We're litigating whether code that helps people find cameras in their apartments should vanish because a fund is embarrassed. The silence after that wasn't quiet. It was active, like the moment a cup stops tipping and decides which way to fall. The judge spoke at last. TRO denied, she said. Motion set for briefing on a normal schedule. Parties are reminded this is not television. They walked out into a hallway where television had already arrived. Microphones, lights, questions with sharpened edges. Diana put up a hand without breaking stride. We'll speak when there's something to say, she said, and the flock peeled away to chase another sound. Back in the elevator, the team exhaled in pieces. Richard checked a phone. "Two things," he said. "Our site's getting hammered. Friendly traffic and not friendly." And Sienna left a voicemail. Says someone rang her bell at 3 a.m. and left a white envelope. "Go," Adrian said to Richard. "Take a car. Don't be obvious. If it's a threat, call it. If it's an offer, photograph it and burn it." The doors opened. The floor hummed. Emails had multiplied like algae in sun. Among them, one with a subject line that looked like a dare. From Veloure. Subject, a quiet conversation. Diana read it over his shoulder. "Rooms are not the enemy," it said. "Only the people who misuse them. There is a way out of this for you, Adrian. It's called discretion." "Reply?" he asked. "Not yet," she said. "Let her believe the marble is still smooth." Maya reappeared with a tablet. "We've got copies of a doc kestrel circulated internally after the TRO filing," she said. "A narrative playbook. Talking points, friendly outlets, surrogate list." Vanessa's segment was line 1. "Source?" Adrian asked, already knowing. "The same anonymous account that sent me the townhouse address months ago," Maya said. "Someone on their side hates the smell of sandalwood." He took the tablet and read, then handed it back. "Publish nothing," he said. "We don't fight script with script. We keep giving away tools." That afternoon, ClearSight dropped a new page. How to ask a venue for its recording policy without losing your nerve. It offered language people could carry into gyms, cafes, employers' offices. It read like a friend who'd done this before and didn't judge you for shaking. The comments filled with stories. A barista who found a pinhole lens in a tip jar. A grad student who discovered their study room shared audio with a donor lounge. A landlord who wrote to say he was removing every smart speaker from his furnished rentals and didn't care if it made him sound old. At 5, Richard texted a photo from Sienna's stoop, an ivory envelope tied with black ribbon. Inside, a single note card. Mistakes can be erased. Careers can be curated. Choose the room you want to stand in. No signature, but the perfume telegraphed an author. "Tell her to keep it," Diana said, "for chain of custody, and get her a hotel under a fake name." "On it," Richard replied. Evening fell with a tired sigh. The office thinned. Adrian and Maya stayed by the window, a ritual they hadn't named. The city blinked its long, indifferent stare. "She went on TV because she thinks TV is where truth lives," Maya said at last. "Sometimes it visits," he said. "It never leases." "Does it bother you, hearing her say those things?" Maya asked without looking away from the glass. "It bothers me less than I expected," he said. "I used to think betrayal required a counterspeech. Turns out it just requires boundaries." Maya nodded. "When I was 14, she said, a story she hadn't told. My mom made me practice calling the utility company to fix a billing error. She stood next to me and made me say my name until my voice stopped shaking. Tonight felt like that. Like saying our name to a room that didn't want to hear it." He let the quiet hold that. "You did fine," he said. The elevator dinged. Diana stepped out, coat over her arm, eyes still bright from the fight. "News from the other side," she said. "Vanessa's lawyer reached out informally. She wants to clarify context in exchange for being left out of future filings. She will offer her word, not mine. Color." "Color?" Adrian said, a dry smile he didn't feel. "She thinks we're painting a wall," Diana replied. "We're laying pipe." "Tell her we don't barter with the past," he said. "If she has facts, there's a scheduler link like everyone else." Diana nodded. Richard also pulled camera install logs from the building contractor. The work order that got your lamper anchored? It came from a throwaway domain registered the week before the device appeared. The contact name was Fiancée. Vanessa, Maya said. Or anyone who wanted it to look like her, Diana said. We don't assume. We prove. They stood there, a triangle of people who had not asked to be a triangle and were becoming one anyway. Behind them, the office lights timed themselves off in polite rows. Adrian's phone vibrated, a voicemail from an unknown number. He put it on speaker because secrecy had stolen enough. A man's voice, practiced cheer. Mr. Cole, this is Edwin Lane with the Ledger. We have documents suggesting a coordinated effort among boutique funds to, shape certain corporate narratives via private events. We're publishing Sunday. Off the record until then, we'd welcome comment. Maya's eyes found his. We don't feed a fire just to watch it burn, she said. We don't hide water either, he said. Diana, give them a sentence about patterns and public interest. No adjectives. If they're good, they don't need ours. She smiled. I like us when we're boring. They packed slowly. Coats on, bags over shoulders, the ordinary choreography of people who had made it through a day without letting anyone take their name away. On the sidewalk, the night smelled like rain that might change its mind. Across the street, a couple argued kindly about whether to get dumplings or go home and cook. A bus sighed. A bicycle whispered past like a thought you almost caught. Tomorrow? Maya said. Depositions, Diana answered. A long table, 2 pitchers of water, words under oath. Boring, Maya said, and her smile this time reached her eyes. Beautiful, Adrian said, and meant it. The marble had cracked, not because they swung a hammer, but because they refused to polish it. The conference room they'd rented by the courthouse looked like every other conference room designed to make truth sound ordinary. 2 cold air, a table long enough to seat a small peace summit. Pitchers of water already sweating. At one end sat a court reporter with the soft authority of someone who turned speech into record. Beside her, a microphone, the thin wand of ritual. Diana slid a binder in front of Adrian. You know the drill, she murmured. Listen more than you talk. Answer only what's asked. If a silence makes them uncomfortable, let it. Maya sat 2 chairs down with a legal pad and a pen she'd already uncapped and recapped 3 times. She had slept badly and looked sharper for it. Opposite them, Kestrel's first witness took the chair. Evan Baird, community architect, blazer with a lapel pin that could have been a bird or a blade. He swore to tell the truth, adjusted the mic, and tried on a smile. Diana started gently, almost bored. Mr. Baird, what is Velour House? A cultural salon, he said smoothly. A space for dialogue among leaders who pays for the townhouse, the staff, the curation, the liquor? He blinked, then smiled again. We have a consortium of patrons. Names? Our patrons value privacy. The reporter's keys ticked. Diana didn't look away. You sent invitees a notice that ambient recording may occur for safety and curation. What is curation? Archival work, Evan said. Memory keeping. Whose memory? He hesitated a beat too long. The house's. Do invitees have access to their own remarks? Another blink. On request. List every person who requested their remarks last year. We don't track at that granularity. You run a salon that records guests without offering them an index, and you call it curation. Diana's tone never rose. Noted. He tried to pivot. Counsel, I must object to the implication. There was no question, she said. Let's talk about money. She slid him a page. This ledger shows payments from Velour House LLC to V. Alvarez Holdings, coded as Artist Residency. Describe the residency. Evan's jaw set. Velour supports creatives. Name a single work produced during Ms. Alvarez's residency. Silence thickened. On the record, it was just ink waiting to happen. Evan cleared his throat. She curated conversations. So she was paid to attend, speak, and bring others who would speak, Diana said, like a fixer in a nicer dress. Objection to characterization, Kestrel's lawyer cut in, finally finding his voice. Withdrawn, Diana said, already turning a page. Last topic, installation orders. Who authorized a contractor to re-anchor a lamp in Mr. Cole's office on March 12th? Evan looked surprised, then cautious. I don't oversee maintenance for Mr. Cole's building. The work order used a domain registered to your team, Fiancée, as the submitter. Does that ring a bell? No. You're under oath, Diana said. She let the words sit without heat. No further questions. Kestrel's counsel tried to rehabilitate him with questions about philanthropy and thought leadership. None of it changed the record. When they broke for lunch, Adrian stood long enough to let blood come back to his legs. The reporter flexed her fingers like a pianist between sets. In the hall, Richard met them with 2 coffees and a look. The ledger moved its piece up, he said quietly. They're publishing at 3. They got bank emails we didn't. Someone leaked from inside the custodian. And there's a line about a device recovered from a CEO's office. They didn't use your name, but if you own a penthouse with glass walls in this zip code. We don't flinch because a clock changed, Diana said. It helps us. They'll normalize the outrage before opposing counsel can claim we made it up. Maya glanced down at her phone. A new message from the anonymous account. You're close. Watch your flanks. Attached, a photo of a whiteboard snapped at an angle. Flow arrows, initials, and Q3 narrative. Pathologize whistle. At the bottom, a date and a time. Someone inside is bleeding truth, she said. Or baiting us to step on it, Diana countered. Either way, we keep our stride. The afternoon witness was less polished. A junior events coordinator who looked like he'd aged 5 years in 5 days. He confirmed what everyone suspected and no one had pinned. Guests were segmented by net worth. Microphones were concealed in objects described as ambient design, and key phrases were clipped and sent to strategic partners who appreciated advance texture. Define texture, Diana said. Talking points before anyone else has them, he said, ashamed and grateful at once to have said it. By 2:50, the room emptied. Phones came out. The ledger banner hit first on Diana's screen, then on Maya's, then everywhere. The private rooms where markets are made. Subhead, a network of funds used invite-only salons to source, shape, and sell narratives. The piece was careful and heavy with receipts. It did not name Vanessa. It did not name Velour in the lead. It did not need to. The details sang. Adrian skimmed until the words stopped being words and turned back into a weight in his hands. He'd expected a sting. It felt like surgery. Cold, necessary, leaving a scar you could live with. Phones? Diana asked. Melting, Richard said. 3 requests to comment. 2 threats dressed as polite letters. And he held up a hand as his earpiece crackled. Security just flagged a badge swipe on 37. After hours, non-employee, guest pass cloned from ops. It's been used twice this week. Both nights Maya left late. Maya's face didn't change, but her pen cap snapped between her fingers. Someone's watching me watch them. Adrian didn't pretend to be calm. We're done here, he said. Richard, lock floors 30 through 45. Quietly. Pull camera review for stairwells and freight. If anyone tails Maya again, you call it and the police. Already moving, Richard said, gone before the sentence cooled. They returned to the office at dusk. The glass showed the city teaching itself to glow. On Adrian's desk sat a package he hadn't left. Slim, anonymous, hand-delivered. He and Diana exchanged a look. Richard scanned, nodded once. Adrian opened it. Inside, a single object, the hollowed base of a lamp, camera removed. With it, a card typed on cream stock. Trust is performative, discretion is profitable, choose better. He let the card rest on the desk and picked up the lamp base. It looked ordinary now that its purpose was excised, like a lie after it's been said out loud. Empty, lighter than it should be. Maya's phone vibrated again, this time a call from an unknown number, local. She hesitated, then answered on speaker. The voice was low, distorted by nothing more than fear. You don't know me, a woman said, breath-catching. I work nights. They told me to clean your floor in the dark. I saw a man waiting by the emergency stairs 2 nights in a row. He didn't look like he belonged. I'm sorry. I didn't know who else to tell. You did the right thing, Maya said softly. Can you meet our security downstairs? No questions, no names. A pause. Okay. When the line went dead, she looked at Adrian. They think intimidation is a strategy. It's a confession, he said. They're losing the only room they ever controlled. Diana's laptop chimed, a calendar invite she had not expected. Deposition notice, Vanessa Alvarez. The other side had moved her onto the board, maybe to cleanse her, maybe to dare them. She wants to talk under oath, Diana said, or they think they can script her there. Set it, Adrian replied. If there are answers, I want to hear them in a room with a record. Maya stepped to the window then, forehead almost against the glass, watching a taxi trace yellow on wet asphalt. I used to think truth was a door, she said. You find it, you walk through, it's done. It's more like a building. You're in it all day and don't notice how many walls refuse to meet. He joined her at the glass. We'll keep walking anyway. They worked until the lights timed out again, until even the cleaners had been escorted home with overtime and gratitude. At the elevator, Diana paused. One more thing, she said. Tomorrow I'll file a preservation letter to Velour and Kestrel. If any tape disappears, it won't quietly. Good, Adrian said. Let the marble hear we brought chisels. The doors closed. The car hummed. For a few floors, they didn't speak. Then Maya exhaled a laugh she hadn't planned. Boring, you said, she murmured. Depositions are boring, Diana answered. Just enough humor to steady the air. The rest is why we show up. The lobby smelled like rain giving up and becoming itself. Outside, a courier waited under the awning with a helmet tucked under an arm. Delivery for coal, he said, offering a slim envelope. Richard materialized out of the revolving door's reflection, took it, opened it under the canopy light. He lifted out a 1-page draft from a boutique PR firm. Reputation recovery for Vanessa A. Bullet points. Recenter narrative around wellness. Frame surveillance as safety. Pathologize whistle, youthful, overzealous. At the bottom, a handwritten note in a looping script. We can all be adults. Call me. V. Adrian didn't look angry. He looked finished. "File it," he told Richard. "Tomorrow we stop answering notes. We'll speak where the microphones belong." They stepped into the street. The crosswalk counted down with orange certainty. Across town, a townhouse full of velvet and cameras dimmed its lamps one by one. In the newsroom, an editor pressed publish on a follow-up. Names added, numbers clarified. Somewhere a junior coordinator drafted a resignation letter and didn't send it yet. And in the cooled, ordinary dark of an office that had learned how to listen without fear, a hollow lamp base sat on a desk like a piece of evidence and a souvenir. Both, while a team planned what to do with the morning. They booked the same bland conference suite on the 12th floor, a place that turned people into transcripts. Glass walls, muted carpet, a jug of water already forming a ring on its coaster. The court reporter set up her machine. The mic blinked its small red eye. Diana slid color-tabbed binders into a neat fan and left one chair empty, the witnesses. Vanessa arrived 3 minutes late and camera ready. A cream suit, hair like a decision, a smile that could have been sincerity or rehearsal. Her lawyers flanked her, one carrying a leather folio, the other carrying silence. "You understand you're under oath," the reporter said. Vanessa lifted her chin. "I do." Diana didn't clear her throat, didn't stiffen her shoulders. She simply eased a page forward like a card dealer who already knew the deck. "Ms. Alvarez," she began, voice level. "Please state your full name and current occupation." "Vanessa Mireille Alvarez, public figure and consultant." The smile held. "Do you consult for Velour House LLC? My friends host events there." A breath of laughter. "I participate." Diana slid Exhibit 1 across the table, bank logo at the top, neat rows of digits below. "This shows 3 payments per month from Velour House to V. Alvarez Holdings, coded artist residency. Is that your company?" "It is." "And the residency produced what exactly?" "Curated conversations," Vanessa said, not missing a step. "Modern salons are ephemeral." "Ephemeral doesn't mean unrecorded." Diana's fingertip rested on Exhibit 2, the emailed ambient recording waiver. "Did you personally solicit guests to those salons?" "Sometimes. With the understanding they were recorded and excerpts shared with strategic partners?" "I wouldn't characterize it that way." "Luckily," Diana said mildly, "we have Velour's characterization." She tapped Exhibit 3, an internal memo. "Clip list to partners by EOD. Prioritize financial textures. Early tells." The reporter's keys ticked like distant rain. Vanessa's lawyer leaned forward. "Objection. Foundation." "Lay it," Diana said, already there. "Ms. Alvarez, did you attend a meeting on March 3rd where Q3 narrative pathologize whistle was written on a whiteboard?" Vanessa's smile thinned. "I attend many meetings." Diana turned her laptop. A grainy photo angled across the screen, the anonymous snap Maya had received, whiteboard, arrows, the phrase circled twice. Beside it, initials. "Whose initials are these, LH, CW, EB, and VA?" Vanessa glanced at her counsel. He gave the practiced microscopic nod. "I won't speculate." "Let's not speculate. LH is Lyle Harrow, Kestrel's COO. CW is Cass Whitcomb, principal at Whitcomb and Asher PR. EB is Evan Baird of Velour House. VA is you." Diana didn't raise her voice. "Correct?" Silence, then. "Those are common initials." Diana let the pause do its work and slid Exhibit 4 into the light. A work order. Re-anchor lamp, swap base for wired unit. Submitter, Vianthia. "Is Vianthia an alias you use?" Diana asked. It's my atelier, a brand. Registered to your personal email, Diana said, turning a Hoy's printout so the table could see the address. On March 12th, that account submitted access instructions to a contractor who entered Mr. Cole's office at 7:18 p.m. True? Vanessa's lawyer. Objection. Assumes facts not in evidence. We'll get to the badge logs, Diana said. For now, did you submit these instructions? Vanessa smoothed an invisible wrinkle from her sleeve. I don't handle installations. Who does? Vendors. Name one. Velour handles vendors. So you directed Velour, Diana said, and Velour directed a vendor to alter a fixture in my client's private office the week before a camera began transmitting from that fixture. And at the same time, your company began receiving regular transfers from Velour coded as residency. She didn't blink. See the shape? Vanessa's eyes hardened, the glitter turning flat. You're drawing lines that don't exist. Let's test a different shape. Diana slid Exhibit 5, the boutique PR one-pager Richard had intercepted the night before. Reputation recovery for Vanessa. A bullet points about wellness, reframing surveillance as safety, pathologize whistle, youthful, overzealous. At the bottom, a handwritten flourish. We can all be adults, call me. V. Did you ask Whitcomb and Asher to smear a young employee who warned my client he was being recorded? Vanessa didn't look at the paper. That's not a fair characterization. It's a direct quote, Diana said. From your plan. Her lawyer finally found a full sentence. We'll stipulate the document's authenticity is contested, and any publication was exploratory. My client denies directing any smear. Duly noted. Diana closed one binder and opened another. New topic. At any point did you inform Mr. Cole that there was a camera in his office? No. Why not? A beat. Because my role in his life was to support his vision, not to micromanage his own security. By adding surveillance he didn't authorize, Diana said. You considered yourself supportive. I considered myself realistic. Vanessa's smile returned, brittle now. Adrian's world is predatory. People will do whatever it takes to get ahead. We were leveling the field. We? Diana asked. People who understand power. And those include? Vanessa's counsel squeezed her forearm under the table. She withdrew. Next question. Diana didn't push. Not there. Final topic for this hour. Payments from Kestrel's advisory arm to V. Alvarez Holdings Coded Content Services. Exhibit 6. Describe the content. Industry insights, event curation, introductions. To whom did you introduce Mr. Baird? People like him. Meaning, people with microphones. Diana capped her pen. No further questions at this time. They broke. Outside, the air in the atrium felt charged, like the building was full of weather. Maya exhaled a breath she'd been rationing and texted Richard. How's the tail? He replied with a photo from a lobby cam. A man in a contractor hoodie being nudged into a service corridor by two security officers, hands open, eyes wide. Badge clone found. Freelancer from a temp agency used by Velour. PD en route. He asked if the girl was safe. Back in the room, Vanessa's lawyers tried to sand the edges. Ms. Alvarez, you're a philanthropist, correct? They asked about literacy drives, about mentoring girls in tech, about gala speeches that photographed well. The reporter typed it all with the same small authority, turning spin and fact into equal lines. At 4, they adjourned. Vanessa rose with the poise of someone practiced at leaving without looking back. At the door she paused, a glance for Adrian she might once have spent. He didn't give her anything to meet. In the hallway, Diana's phone chimed. A reply from opposing counsel to her preservation letter. "We object to your fishing expedition," had been translated into Latin grammar and billable hours. Beneath it, a footnote. Velour House is a venue, not a party. Diana smiled without warmth. They're going to pretend the room is innocent. Rooms don't plug themselves in, Maya murmured. Richard joined them with an update. The freelancer's talking. Says he swapped bases twice. Your office and a boardroom on 40. Says the tickets came through a shell routing to Whitcomb and Asher. Kestrel paid the agency. Velour served as creative. You were right about the whiteboard crew. Names? Diana asked. Lyle Harrow signed one of the SOWs. Cass Whitcomb approved the copy for those texture emails. Evan Baird coordinated access with V. Anthe. Freelancer says he never knew what the bases did, just that they were stabilized units with sound dampening. Sound dampening, Maya repeated, tasting the cynicism. You hide a mic and call it quiet. PD will charge trespass and unlawful recording if the DA's feeling brave. Richard went on. Either way, we've got him on the badge clone. He's scared. He said a woman at Velour told him, if anyone asks, you were fixing a wobble. Of course she did, Diana said. They crossed to Adrian's office. The hollow lamp base still sat on his desk like a relic, proof the lie had once been heavy. He stood by the window, watching long blue shadows turn to dark. When they briefed him, he didn't ask them to repeat anything. He nodded once, as if something inside him had quietly clicked into place. Their next move? He asked. Two-pronged, Diana said. They'll push a human interest piece about Vanessa's journey to balance, while filing a motion to quash and calling us invasive. They'll try to make Maya a symbol of overreach. We're filing an emergency motion for a temporary restraining order. No further recording of invitees or employees without explicit consent. No deletion, full device inventory. And we'll ask the court to treat Velour as an alter ego of Kestrel for discovery. And criminal? He asked. I'll refer the freelancer statement and your evidence to the AG's tech crime unit, Diana said. Locals may wobble, state won't if they smell a headline. Adrian nodded. Do it. Maya rested a palm on the back of a chair, a small anchor. There's more, she said softly, sliding her phone across the desk. A new message from the anonymous number. Check the boardroom ceiling on 40. The lamp wasn't the only ear. Attached, a close shot of a smoke detector with a hairline seam. Richard was already on his radio. Ops, freeze access to 40. No one in, no one out. I want every detector bagged and tagged. Diana closed her binder and looked at Adrian. We started with a lamp. We're about to find a constellation. He squared his shoulders, not like a man bracing for impact, but like one deciding to move first. Tomorrow morning, he said, we go to court. They went home late and separately. Maya rode the train with her hood up and her headphones in and no music playing, a trick she'd learned to hear the world while convincing it to leave her alone. At her stop, she paused on the platform and texted her mother a photo of the night sky between buildings. I'm okay. Work is loud. I love you. Her mother replied with a heart and a soup emoji and the words, eat something hot, a benediction disguised as a reminder. Adrian lay awake in the penthouse and stared at the pale rectangle of the ceiling, then rolled over and opened his notebook. Not the digital kind, the paper one with the stitched spine. He wrote a single sentence. Trust cannot be outsourced. Then he closed it and slept for the first time in 3 nights. At 8:30 a.m., they filed the TRO. The clerk stamped it with a thunk that felt like a small verdict. The judge granted a hearing at noon. At 11:50, as they rode the elevator up with their boxes and a simple argument, consent is not a luxury. Diana's phone buzzed again. A push alert, exclusive, audio from inside a billionaire's boardroom. A clip autoplayed beneath the headline, tinny and edited. Adrian's voice stitched into something he hadn't said. Maya looked up at him, color draining, then returning with heat. They're trying to pre-poison the well? Diana didn't flinch. Then we make the well the record. The elevator doors opened on a corridor that smelled faintly of wax and coffee. At the end, a courtroom waited. Wood warm as breath, seal above the bench, pews already filling with press and the curious. On the other side, Kestrel's counsel stood with his own stack of paper and a face set to reasonable. They took their places. The bailiff called the room to order. The judge settled her glasses and looked down at both tables like a woman who'd heard every story but still believed in rulings. Diana rose. Good afternoon, Your Honor. Before the court is a simple request. Stop unlawful recording, preserve evidence, and prevent the weaponization of edited audio against people who never consented. Across the aisle, Kestrel's lawyer rose with his own adjectives. Maya sat behind the bar with her pen already moving. Adrian sat beside Diana, spine straight, eyes forward. Outside, somewhere across town, a velvet-lit townhouse dimmed its lamps for daytime and told itself this was just another story to curate. Inside, the mic on the judge's bench glowed red. This time, the room with the record belonged to the law. The courtroom's air felt electrically clean, like a storm had just passed or was about to begin. The judge, Honir Marisol Ibarra, adjusted her glasses and looked over the two tables with the dry patience of someone who'd seen entire empires insist their microphones were metaphors. Counsel, she said, I've read the papers. Keep me to the law. Kestrel's attorney stood first, voice lacquered. Your Honor, this is overreach. Our clients host conversations. Participants sign venue waivers. Mr. Cole's office is a workplace, not a sanctuary. This is, at worst, sloppy consent, not a constitutional crisis. And the so-called lamp, Diana rose smoothly, is a transmitting device installed without the occupant's knowledge in a locked private office. We're not litigating vibes. We're litigating unlawful interception and trespass. There are recordings of non-invitees. There's badge cloning. There's an organized pipeline to a PR firm that then weaponized edited audio. Kestrel's counsel raised a palm. Edited? We categorically deny. Diana tapped her binder. Your Honor, we just received a push alert with a clipped boardroom audio. We've brought chain of custody affidavits on the original meeting. Here is the unedited file and the waveform comparison. Amplitude mismatches, splices, discontinuities. Anyone with ears can hear the knife. The judge listened on headphones for 30 seconds. When she removed them, her eyebrows had moved a millimeter, enough to register disappointment, not surprise. All right, she said. TRO is granted, effective immediately. No recording of Mr. Cole, his invitees, or employees in any room he exclusively controls, absent written, specific consent. Respondents will inventory and sequester all devices placed in Mr. Cole's premises or common areas accessed via his credentials, and deliver a list to the court by close of business tomorrow. No deletion. No rotation. Violation will be contempt. Kestrel's attorney leaned toward a microphone that was now, unmistakably, the state's. Your Honor, Velour House is merely a venue, which sometimes hosts facts, Judge Ibarra replied. You'll comply. A murmur rolled across the gallery and died under a gavel's single tap. Outside, the hallway became a tide. Boom mics craned. Flashbulbs stitched light. Diana guided Adrian and Maya toward the elevators with the kind of economy that wins small wars. A reporter shouted, "Mr. Cole, is this a lover's quarrel in litigation clothing?" Adrian's jaw ticked once. He stopped at the bank of microphones anyway. "Consent isn't a lifestyle brand," he said, life returning to his voice in measured lines. "If a conversation is recorded, you say so, in words grown-ups can read. If audio is edited, you call it fiction. We'll litigate the rest inside." He didn't look triumphant, only certain, then stepped away. Back upstairs, Richard was waiting with a rolling case and a face that said the building had coughed up its ghosts. "You were right," he told them in the glassed conference room. On the table, a neat morgue of objects. 4 lamp bases with unfamiliar weight. 2 smoke detectors with hairline seams. A power strip heavier than its cord deserved. A framed inspirational quote with a camera pinhole in the dot over the eye. "All transmitters," Richard said. 3 hardwired into a riser closet. Whoever installed knew the guts of the place. Our freelancer mapped 2 floors, but this was bigger. A network. Maya leaned over the frame. Stay hungry, stay humble. The irony landed like a thud. Were they all live? Some dormant, some chirping, Richard said. We're isolating a MAC address cluster that jumps to a relay and a boutique ISP, the same boutique that serves velour. Diana photographed each item, dropped a printed chain of custody template beside them, then turned to Adrian. We'll file a supplemental before sundown. The judge will expand the scope. The more this looks systemic, the less patience she'll have for lifestyle euphemisms. Adrian nodded. Do it. They were still cataloging when an email ghosted into the general counsel inbox. Settlement dialogue? Subject polite, body less so. In effect, Kestrel proposed a calibrated forgetting. A public statement about misunderstandings, a mutual non-disparagement, quiet removal of devices, no admission, each party carrying their own performances back to their velvet rooms. Diana read it twice and passed the phone to Adrian. They're asking you to sell a silence that isn't yours, she said. Even if you wanted to, Maya can't be unwhistled. Maya shook her head quickly. This isn't about me, she started, then stopped because it was, in one sense, exactly about her. It's about the next her, Adrian said. We don't settle this into a press release. He typed 2 words to counsel. Hard no. News moved as if it had been waiting. The judge's order hit the docket. The docket hit the feeds. The audio comparison hit a tech blog that loved a good splice. Someone dug up a brochure from a salon, describing itself as a listening studio. Someone else posted a photo of the whiteboard. Pathologize whistle circled twice, and quoted it in a thread that threaded itself into a drumbeat. By evening, a sponsor paused their partnership to listen. By midnight, Velour's homepage became a single sentence about space for conversation that now read like a dare. Sometime after dark, the anonymous number pinged Maya again. You made it matter. Be careful. She stared at the words until they blurred. She typed back, Who are you? A typing bubble appeared, disappeared, didn't return. At dawn, a courier delivered a banker's box from Vanessa's counsel per the court's order. Inside, paper that wanted to be everything and nothing. Invoices with euphemisms. A content calendar labeled textures with entries like boardroom banter. Lift 017. A media strategy with a column called Counter-Truths. In the back, an envelope without a label. Glossy photos from charity galas. Vanessa's practiced smile beside executives now pointedly absent from comment. And a handwritten card in the same sweeping script as the PR draft. We could have kept each other safe. Diana slid the card back without touching it. The thing about masks, she said, is they fit until they don't. By noon, the judge expanded the TRO to common areas accessed with cloned credentials and authorized a neutral forensic examiner to image Velour's servers. Kestrel's counsel called it draconian. The judge called it practical. When he tried again, she looked over her glasses and said, "You may save your adjectives for your clients." Late afternoon, Adrian called an all-hands. They packed the atrium, the kind of meeting that makes a building feel like a body. He stood on the mezzanine where sound gathered and didn't use the mic. It made people lean in. "I owe you an apology," he said. "I built a place where you were asked to bring your best. I didn't make sure the rooms respected you back. We're fixing that, legally, physically, culturally. New consent protocols, no opt-outs. If you whisper here, it's because you want to be heard." He turned to the glass wall that reflected them all. "Some of you warned me sooner than I heard you. Thank you for trying anyway. Starting today, there's a standing line to the General Counsel. Anonymous or named, we'll protect you. And to the person who took the risk first." He looked for Maya in the crowd and found her only when she didn't duck. "You changed the room." The applause was not the kind that thrashes. It was the kind that carries, palms on rails, knuckles on tables, a sound as much agreement as appreciation. After, as the building exhaled, Vanessa called. Not her lawyer, her. Diana put it on speaker. "Congratulations," Vanessa said. The polish was intact. The edges were new. "You won a hearing." "This will be more than a hearing," Diana said. "You don't know the depth of what you're poking," Vanessa replied. "You think Kestrel is the tree. It's a root system. They'll cut you off from water and call it weather." A tiny inhale. "Walk away, Adrian. Start a new story. I'll leave yours alone." Adrian looked out past the city to where the sky wore its evening bruise. "The story is already written," he said. "It's just finally being read." Silence. Then a laugh without air. "You always did prefer the moral of the tale." The line clicked dead. That night, Richard confirmed the boutique ISP had folded up its client list under subpoena and sent it to the examiner. 3 shell companies discoloring the same page. 2 board members' names baked into an advisory retainer. A payment path that turned circles into lines. Diana drafted the amended complaint with quiet ferocity. Counts: unlawful interception, trespass, unfair competition, defamation by implication, civil conspiracy, injunctive relief. Relief sought, damages, yes. But more importantly, permanent injunction, device purge, third-party audit, corrective statements distributed wherever the edits had aired. When she finished, she looked up and found Maya asleep on the sofa, a legal pad tented over her chest, a pen still in her hand. Diana draped a coat over her and turned off the harsh lights, leaving only the city's slow pulse to paint the room. Adrian lingered at the window, then reached for the switch on the desk lamp. It glowed, ordinary and unrecording. He touched the cool brass and felt, for the first time in weeks, that an object was only itself. He opened his paper notebook and wrote one more line beneath the first. "The room is what we make of it." Down in the lobby, the security desk phone rang. A guard answered, listened, frowned, then waved Richard over. "Tip line," he said. Woman's voice. Said there's a storage unit across town with decor crates from velour. Said we should go tonight. Richard looked at the clock, then at the map, then at his team. "Let's make the room bigger," he said. They moved as a small convoy through a city that watched without interfering, past neon and noodle shops and a laundromat's blue hum, to a corrugated row that slept like an animal. The unit rolled open with a steel cough. Inside, the crates stacked like polite secrets. They cut the first seal: lamp bases, smoke detectors, frames with dots over the eye. They cut another: drives, labeled, dated, indexed. They cut a third: a Pelican case with a whiteboard snapshot taped inside the lid. Q3 narrative, pathologize whistle. Under it, a Sharpie scrawl, proof of concept. Diana photographed everything, then called the examiner, then the judge's clerk. Within an hour, the unit was sealed with a court tag. The air smelled like dust and something else, like a story reversing direction. On the way back, Maya watched the city's sodium lights strobe the van's ceiling and felt, oddly, calm. Not done, but past the point where the worst thing was not knowing. Back in the office, Adrian switched off the lamp and left the room to the dark it deserved. On his desk, the notebook waited for the next line. Morning would arrive with subpoenas and statements and headlines that used the word scheme without coyness. But for a clutch of hours, the building was quiet, and the only blinking light belonged to the alarm panel by the door. A mic that watched no one. A witness that said nothing. The unmasking had a paper trail now. The finale would have a date. By the time dawn rinsed the glass of the high-rise, the storage unit was under seal, the drives were logged, and the paper trail had grown from rumor to record. The court clerk slotted an emergency hearing onto the calendar. The neutral forensic examiner had already mirrored 3 terabytes and flagged file names that read like stage directions. Harvest, boardroom, B2, move, splice, softer ending, wav, counter-truths, vive, vatu, dakas, x. No more salon poetry, just evidence. The hallway outside Judge Ibarra's courtroom hummed with a different kind of attention. Less spectacle, more gravity. When the doors opened, the case swallowed the room the way weather swallows a city. Diana's presentation was spare. No speeches. She let the exhibits speak. The lamp base with its tidy violence. The waveform with its jagged scar. The invoice that renamed surveillance as texture capture. Then came the drives from the unit across town and the whiteboard photo. The circle around pathologize whistle. The line under proof of concept. Kestrel's attorney tried a final pirouette. Creative documentation, Your Honor. Brands curate. That's not a felony, it's over, Judge Ibarra said, not unkindly. She turned to the court reporter. Let's be precise. Then to the parties. The temporary restraining order is converted to a preliminary injunction. Respondents and their agents are enjoined from any covert recording, editing, or dissemination of Mr. Murbrason Cole's conversations and likeness, and from using any device to capture audio or video in premises he occupies, without written, informed consent. A special master will inventory and purge devices and data. A corrective statement will run anywhere edited content appeared, clearly labeled as such. Depositions proceed on an expedited schedule. Sanctions are reserved. If you curate the court's orders, I will cure you of the habit. The gavel fell once. The sound lingered like a closing door. Outside, microphones reached, but the quotes were simple. Diana. Consent is not flavor, it's law. Adrian. We'll be implementing the same standard inside our walls. No victory lap. They walked back through the heat that rises from pavement when a storm breaks. In the days that followed, the network frayed with surprising speed. A sponsor that had paused to listen began to hear the subpoenas whisper and stepped away completely. A boutique ISP answered the special master with a list of relays that looked like a family tree, shells seeding shells, until it led back to real names. 2 board members resigned from Kestrel ahead of depositions. A PR firm scrubbed its site of a case study titled Shaping the Room. Vanessa did not appear in public. Her counsel filed a letter reserving all rights and disclaiming all knowledge. The letter read like a silk scarf drawn through a ring, effortless, frictionless, designed not to catch. It didn't matter. The record, now stubborn and specific, had its own fabric. Adrian kept his promise inside his company first. By week's end, every conference room carried a small placard at eye level, plain language, no euphemism. No recording without explicit written consent, requested each time. If you see or hear a device you didn't invite, report it. You will be protected. Facilities replaced housings, inspectors checked risers, security retired every smart object whose intelligence could be repurposed. HR opened a channel to the General Counsel's office that bypassed management entirely, anonymous if needed, answered by people with names. At the next all hands, Adrian didn't stand above them. He stood among them. "I can't fix what I won't name," he said. "So we'll name things. Not to shame the frightened into silence, but to keep the room safe enough for truth." The applause wasn't loud. It was steady. Sometimes that's stronger. Maya's world shifted without ceremony. Her badge now opened doors she had once waited outside. Her title changed from intern to analyst, then to aide to the office of the CEO, though no one called her that aloud. They called her by her name. On a gray afternoon, the anonymous number returned. Storage unit was only half. Check the florist invoices. Richard cross-referenced deliveries that arrived as bouquets and weighed like bowling balls. A second cache surfaced. A florist's cooler that had cooled more than lilies. They found another Pelican case. Inside, a thumb drive labeled Velour Live Cuts such a beta, and a short list of source cultivators. One of the names wore a tuxedo in a photo beside Vanessa at last year's gala. "Root system," Diana murmured, remembering the warning. She filed the amended complaint with the new exhibits. Then came depositions. Conference rooms turned into narrow theaters. The cameraman clicked record with the solemnity of church. A former Kestrel coordinator explained how ambiance became pipeline. A tech described the lamp's internals, how the lens dressed as brass. A junior PR staffer cried when shown the board with pathologized whistle, then described the memo that taught her which words to use when a human voice threatened the brand. "Do you know Maya?" Diana asked gently. The young woman nodded, embarrassed by the motion. "What were you told to call her?" Liability." She flinched. "I'm sorry." "You just told the truth," Diana said. "That changes what she's called." By late summer, settlement talks returned, but the shape had changed. No more calibrated forgetting. The numbers were real, the remedies broader, the admissions no longer coded in adjectives. Diana brought the proposal to Adrian and left it on the table without selling it. "It won't fix all of it," she said, "but it will make a different world for the next person who whispers." Adrian read each page twice. "We keep the injunctive terms either way," he said. "The culture and the audit. The corrective statements in full." He looked to Maya. "What do you think?" Maya didn't pretend to be a lawyer. "If it helps the next one before they're alone in a hallway," she said, "take it. But don't trade our promise inside this building for anything." "We won't," he said. They signed. The court entered the consent decree with the weight of an order, not a wish. Kestrel funded an independent grant for research and training on informed consent and anti-retaliation. Velour's spaces went dark for what they called reimagining, and everyone else called repairs. The PR firm issued a statement that used the word apology without scaffolding. There were losses, too. A few clients left the company, uncomfortable with the attention. A quiet investor asked for time apart. Adrian understood. Integrity is expensive at first. Then it discounts the noise you never needed. On a soft October evening, the building hosted its first open forum since the injunction. No cameras, no press, just employees and guests, folding chairs and coffee, a microphone that worked only when it was handed to you. They called it the room we keep. People spoke about the times they hadn't been believed and the times they had. About how consent looks like paperwork until it looks like respect. About fear and the ways it leaves when it has nowhere left to hide. When it was Maya's turn, she stood with the mic at her waist for a long beat. "I was scared the night I knocked," she said, eyes steady. "I was more scared the hour after, when nothing happened yet, and the lamp kept shining like a secret. But there's something heavier than fear. It's pretending you don't see. I'm glad I saw." She handed the mic to the next voice. Later, on the balcony, city lights stitched a slow seam along the horizon. Richard drifted over, hands in pockets. "You know," he said, "for a man who likes control, you threw a lot of it away." Adrian smiled. "Maybe the wrong kind. Turns out the right kind begins when you stop managing people like variables and start trusting them like witnesses." "Trust saved you," Richard said, recalling a sentence he'd heard him mutter once to a room that had finally gone quiet. "And it keeps us," Adrian answered. A familiar number lit Maya's phone again. She showed the screen to them both. "You did it right. I couldn't." A no name, no need. She typed back, "You're not too late. If you want to talk, we can listen." The bubble pulsed, retreated, returned. "Maybe soon. Keep the room." They left the balcony to laughter and the small percussion of cups. Inside, the lamp on Adrian's desk cast its ordinary circle, warm and finite. He'd kept the paper notebook beside it, the 2 lines he'd written now joined by a third. "Trust saved me." The room is what we make of it. We keep it together. Weeks passed, then winter. The consent decree did its slow work, not glamorous, just durable. The company learned new reflexes. Meetings began with a check-in, not a recording light. Whispering became a right again, not a risk. People tapped the placard with their knuckles as they entered rooms, like sailors touching a ship's brass for luck. Once at a crosswalk, Adrian saw Vanessa on the far curb. She wore a coat he recognized and a face he didn't. Their eyes met for a half-breath. No gloat, no plea, just the odd civility of 2 people who had once shared an outline. The light changed. They moved on. Some endings aren't doors slamming. They're windows opening to different streets. On the anniversary of the first whisper, Maya left a small wrapped box on Adrian's desk. Inside was a brass plate engraved with 3 plain words. "Ask, then listen." He laughed, soft and grateful, and fastened it under the desk lamp so the light would hit the letters every evening. That night, he stayed late. Not alone, no longer alone, but last, the way some stewards are. He walked the length of the floor, fingers grazing chair backs and railings, checking nothing in particular and everything that matters. At the lobby, he paused by the security console. The guard glanced up, and in the green glow of the panel, Adrian saw their two reflections. Not owner and employee, just two people keeping a threshold. "Quiet night," the guard said. "The best kind," Adrian replied. He almost added a joke about how silence used to scare him. Instead, he let the quiet stand, earned and clean. Outside, the city breathed its winter breath. Inside, the light over the desk made a small, honest circle, enough for one page, then another. The billionaire didn't unmask anyone that evening. He didn't need to. Masks had a way of falling now, in rooms that belonged to the truth.